as part of the Champion People feature. There's one last voice note I want to pick up on because people are responding to the when do you give or take. So here's it. In fact, let's see if I can do just that. Okay. I'll tell you what we do. If we can't do that, we will play that voice note right at the very end. Okay, when we say our Assalamu alaikum on the Friday, I will do just that anyway. All right, let's get to the business of now. Retired Judge Siraj Desai with me, and as you know, is featured in this Champion People feature, which we do because it's consistent with my own ethos and mantra and my purpose, which is champion South Africa, or to build South Africa into a champion nation. So we look at people who are champions in their space. So. Judge Siraj Desai, Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and Juma Mubarak, and yeah, you see, you've been tagged one of the champions, so good for you.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning to everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time. So here's the thing. I mean, how do you get introduced nowadays? Before it would be like Judge Siraj Desai. Now it's retired judge. So what's the protocol in terms of how you are formally introduced and then informally?
I don't particularly care how I'm introduced, as long as I don't do it discourteously. But a judge remains a judge for the rest of his natural life, so you can call me judge still.
So formally it would be the judge, okay. But I think your point is right. Sometimes, I mean, do you think, and I'm sidetracking, but do you think often, in my many years in the media space, there's this thing about, the honorable minister, and I'm talking about more like an MP, that there's an over-exaggeration of their titles where it's not linked to actual achievement?
Yes, of course. It's the titles are pompous. I mean, even for a judge, my real title would be the Honorable Mr. Justice. Now, who wants to call anybody the Honorable Mr. Justice?
Well, I'm very uncomfortable calling you that, so we certainly won't, yeah.
Yes. So, and we tried to do away with that a few years ago in the Western Cape, not calling the judge your Honorable Mr. Justice, but that simply faded away because the advocates were so used to calling the judge my Lord, my Lord. My Lord is the title he referred to a judge in court. Except that I had a very good friend. His name was Haji Esop. And when he appeared in court, he refused to use the word my Lord. He said, only have one Lord. There are people who adopt that, but they're quite correct for other reasons,
And what happened to the Haji Esop then when he refused? Was his refusal allowed?
Well, he's doing more with me because he knew I'd indulge him in that regard. He passed on, unfortunately. He's a very good attorney years ago.
All right, good. Well, a great start to this. So what does a retired judge do now? What's your daily gig now?
Well, last night I attended the farewell function for the National Council of Correctional Services. I was the chair of that body for something like 20 odd years most of the time, since 1996. That body deals with the release of lifers. If you have a mother or father or uncle or aunt in jail who's been sentenced to life imprisonment the last 30 years, I probably dealt with the release of that offender. I've left that position last night. I left it the end of March. My term expired, and obviously I can't do that anymore in the light of my new appointment. So
let's talk about your new appointment. What is your new appointment now?
Let's just come to that. Before I come to the new, I also have other various occupations. I also chair now in its crisis the District 6 Museum, the board of the District 6 Museum, which is facing a crisis, as you know from the press. And I also do other functions in the community. But now officially I'm the legal ombud. I'm the ombud for the legal profession in South Africa in terms of the Act. The president appointed me sometime December last year, but it's a new post, so it will take some time to set it up. And we've been setting it up now, and very soon it will be operational. That will deal with complaints which people have against attorneys, which will be brought to the legal ombud if they don't get satisfaction, the Legal Practice Council. That's going to be a tough act. It's a new position. Firstly, to build the office and to give it credibility in the South African context. And secondly, it's become increasingly important because of the large-scale offences committed by the legal profession throughout the country. And the poor, most importantly, are disadvantaged by the conduct of the miscreant attorneys. And we have to deal with that situation in a proper and effective manner. And I propose to do that the best that the law permits me to do. The ambit of the act is very wide, but how the ambit is to be coloured in depends on the role I fulfil as the first legal ombud in the country. We're setting up offices. Very soon the minister will announce the head office, which will probably be somewhere in Centurion, and I'd also be at the satellite office here in Cape Town. So that will be a significant development in the process of disciplining attorneys who overstray, and also for a protection for the public in all sorts of manners in which they encounter the legal profession. You just seen recently or last night what's been happening with the road accident fund, and they've been the source of many of the problems in the country. The road accident fund, and also the really many. I mean, I was an attorney once many years ago, and I was an attorney, probably one of the most honourable attorneys South Africa has ever seen. The late Dalla Oma was my principal mentor as an attorney, and we never had any problems. But can I tell you one thing? That we had the largest practice in the 70s, in the early 80s, of people walking into your office because Dalla just didn't charge anybody any fees. Everybody came to us.
Yeah.
But the most important thing was this, and what I point out is this: we never got third-party claims. Because one I had was a lady who was at school with me and somebody else, and I asked her, why don't we get these thousands of people walking in here, and we're not getting third-party claims? And Dalla told me very profoundly then that I do not, and I've never paid a tout. And I realized the third-party work, you get that by touting, and that was the practice then, and it remains the practice today until that sort of system is addressed. The dishonest attorney is very much around. I'm not saying all attorneys are dishonest. There are many, many good attorneys. There are many good attorneys in this country, and we must look after them and nurture them as an asset to society.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's certainly something that I think one has to talk about in terms of the overall reputation of people who should be upholding the law and certainly upholding justice and maybe not quite doing that is something I've had a chat off the air with Dr. Somadada Fikeni in his new position as the Commissioner of the Public Services Commission. Another big, but another time, right? Well, it's a good way. You mentioned Dalla Omar. I mean, absolutely. Quite certainly someone I looked up to as a lighty when I understood exactly what his role is in establishing a democratic South Africa. I think the first Minister of Justice, if I'm not
that's correct.
mistaken. You can correct me there. But let's talk about you. I mean, so you're this retired judge now, but I mean, something happened to put you on that journey to becoming a legal person in the first place. So where did it start, and then what happened next?
Yeah, I have the most unlikely origin. I mean, I grew up in the back streets of Salt River. To those of you not familiar with Cape Town, that's your old Fitas or something like that.
Absolutely.
To rise from those sort of surroundings in the circumstances that we grew up in, to become a judge is the most unlikely consequence. Somebody had looked at me as a 7-year-old and said, he's going to be a judge one day. Nobody would have believed you. But I did go through people. I met some talented people throughout my life. Dalla was one who played an enormous role in my life. I knew him really from my school days. There's also a gentleman by the name of Advocate Benny Keys. Few people remember him now, but in the 50s and 60s, he was an ideologue, left-wing ideologue in the Western Cape and probably in the country. He was one of the founders of the old non-European unity movement, in which I also have my roots as a young chap. But it was not so much the political movement, but the orientation of that movement, the ethics, the principled nature of the struggle that one learned from people like that. There was Benny Keys, there was Dalla, and there were many. I had an uncle who worked for tutors for many years, and throughout my adult life, I mean, he was an enormous, played an enormous role in my life. Many people in Gauteng know him. We used to call him Duli Desai. It's my father's younger brother.
Certainly check it
It's
out.
my
So
father's younger brother.
I'm thinking about the point that you made. When you say Salt River, yeah, I certainly am very familiar with those parts of Cape Town. I'm sort of imagining. I think the Voice of the Cape is very much in that Salt River area.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And the old Rex Truefarm building was just there. So that's where I'm just thinking about.
No,
where
but
you were.
you're talking of the main road. You're talking of the
Yeah,
main
I'm talking
road.
the main road. Yeah,
I'm talking of the heart of the city, which is down the road, the back streets.
And understandably so, of course, on the way up to Warmer Estate or whatever, right? But here's the point. So you're saying, but for all intents and purposes, coming from that community, you should not have become a lawyer or a judge, right? What then happened to you? I mean, something happened. Somebody intervened, deliberately, unintentionally, that put you on this path. What happened to you?
You see, basically, it wasn't so much an intervention by a philanthropist. It was just my political training then as a young man. I had some talent in that field. And I landed up, I was at Trafalgar High School in District 6. I was there when the Group Areas Act declared the area a white area. And District 6 has remained the great passion in my life, the restoration of the community in that area. But I was at Trafalgar in 1966 when the area was declared white. The school children in my class started disappearing. This disappearing like you hear in Chile. They started being moved. The families started moving to the Cape Flats. And it was an enormously politically awakening moment. And then when I matriculated, there's very little we could do. In those days, there was a separate Universities Act in operation. And I couldn't go to any university in Cape Town. Although my father was born in Cape Town, I was born in Cape Town, I couldn't go to a university out here. And then I ended up going to the University of Durban, Westville, Salisbury Island in those days. I must confess, and I'll say this on any public platform, that I'm indebted to the generation I was at university with. It was an outstanding generation. They inspired me. Probably some will say I inspired them, but my generation inspired me.
And who are those people who inspired you? Are there names you can share?
There are many, but I had very close friends. One was the late Dawood Sader, who was an attorney in Ladysmith. He died a few years ago. I went to see him a week before he died, actually. And there was another guy called Suresh Patel, was my close friend for many generations. And there's this Pops Appelbaker, who is an advocate presently in Durban running the campaign for the Overport residents. Now, these are the people. And then, of course, there was Yunus Karim, who joined later. The MP was much younger than us. Of course, there was Praveen Gordon, who was my contemporary. Sats Cooper, whom I knew. Also, there are many others. I don't want to prejudice anybody, but they were all, look at the entire generation, was a noble one. Noble then. Yeah. I don't know how they featured later in life. But they played an enormous role they contributed, every one of them, to creating a better South Africa. It was.
I'm going to pick up on your own personal career highlights just for yourself, and we'll do that in a moment. We are chatting to retired Judge Siraj Desai, featured in The Champion People here on the Ashraf Garda Show on Solar Media.
#That's my point with Ashraf Garda.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
My Lord, show me right from wrong.
Huda SA is an organization that focuses primarily on assisting communities within the eThekwini region by collaborating with existing Islamic centers, mosques and madrases. Your contribution goes towards the uplifting of orphans and vulnerable children, including vulnerable families, by assisting with education, welfare, nutrition and maintenance of madrasas, mosques and Islamic community centers. Make the difference. Donate to our noble causes. More information is available at huda-int.org or WhatsApp or call us on 031 271 3049.
My Lord, show me right from wrong. Give me light, make me strong. I know the road is long.
Connect with Salam Media on Twitter at Salam Media.
We haven't forgotten about people who sent further voice notes, and you can do that. We'll play that just at the end of this conversation in another 10 minutes or so, roughly. That voice note WhatsApp line 061 766 0355, voice note or text, okay? Both on the giving and the taking that we spoke about, but also in terms of our guest today. How much do you know about Judge Siraj Desai? How little do you know? What inspires you just listening to him right now? I certainly like the fact that it's just too much, names are just too pompous with titles. Like, certainly, I will take that anytime, absolutely. Okay, let's get back to you, Judge Siraj Desai. So in terms of your career, I'm going to fast forward. So if you rewind in that fast forward about, key career highlights for you, maybe three, something you'd like to amplify. Tell us about them.
Can I just take you back for one step? I forgot to mention
Sure.
that when I started off in Durban, people like the late Rick Turner was shot and killed. I had met him and attended meetings with him. And of course, Steve Biko was my exact contemporary in the early years in Durban. Those, of course, were very inspiring figures for a young man like me. Then a foreign Indian in Durban. I was described as a foreign Indian because I was the only Indian university outside of India, and I was a foreign Indian.
And did you speak with a Cape? Did you speak with a Cape twang? I mean, maybe you did, right?
Of course, they used to laugh at me. The students, my colleagues, could never say. I said magazine instead of magazine, and they used to laugh at my not saying magazine. But okay, that's and also besides my English was better than theirs. They had to concede eventually. I had good training. The highlights, yes. Well, the first highlight was obviously I started off in legal career, the small firm in town, which Esa Musa, the late Esa Musa was a partner. But my highlight was that firm closed down. I started with Dalla Omar on the 7th of January 1977. Dalla was my hero politically and socially, and it was a great moment for me to enter the firm, A.M. Omar and Company. I still have.
And you went into, and I just want to understand this. You went into the legal fraternity. Why? Notwithstanding your politicization that you've referenced earlier on, like when you pursued that legal route, what was your outcome? What was your end goal?
Now, you see, my heroes were all political figures, and they were all the three of them were lawyers. And my intent in entering the legal profession was then increasingly so, not to make money, but to advance the cause of struggle in this country. I started off with that intent, and my entire career, unfortunately or fortunately, was built on contributing to struggle. I was with Dalla Omar, and I was saying last night that one of the first cases I had to appear was for the gentleman who tried to blow up the Cape High Court. I worked first with the late Ben Keys and then with Ismail Mohammed, who I appeared with on a few occasions. They were both outstanding people. And then my next step, the next career in my life, step in my mouth. One day I was pretty bored with being an attorney, and I was walking on the friend on Sea Point Beach, and he said, "You want to become an advocate?" And I made that decision to become an advocate on Sea Point Beach. And I landed up, was the best decision I ever made because, advocates have a problem setting up practice. But because I had been an attorney for 4 years, and there were people like Haji Esoperan who were attorneys, they were good friends, I started getting work immediately. But the work I first did was, you did divorces and applications to court and that sort of stuff. But then the riots, the end result of the 76 riots was still in effect. And then the 1980 riots started. And by then I was one of the more experienced trial lawyers in the political world in Cape Town. So I landed up probably back to back doing criminal trials, political trials, terrorism trials throughout the country, from Cape Town, lots of matters in Port Elizabeth, Kimberley, and even in Mahikeng, which was then known as Mafeking. I was on the road all the time. In between, I found time to get married, just about. And I had 3 beautiful children. I have 3 beautiful children who are now adults. My late wife, as you know, died a few years ago. But then we carried on. And then when the new South Africa came, I was simply just an experienced lawyer, trial lawyer. And I was about to now on the cusp of getting a bigger and greater practice. And Dalla called me and said, why don't you just become a judge? I said, what? Just become a judge. He says, we have to change the color of the bench, and you're the most experienced chap. We'll nominate you to the JSC. And then under somewhat pressure, I was then also the chairman of the Woodstock ANC. So I was, it's nonsense now, you can't be politically involved. We were all politically involved before we became judges. I mean, now they say, why were you politically involved in the interviews? That's nonsense. I was intensely involved in the events that were occurring then. And then they suggested to me, why don't you just make yourself available? I did not volunteer. And then I made myself available, interviewed on the panel with people like Ismail Mohammed, Arthur Chaskelson, George Bezos, and Dalla, of course. And Dalla disclosed his interest that he knew me. And of course, Johnny Aronson, who was a very close family friend, trade unionist, leading member of COSATU in later years. He's still very much around. I attended his 80th birthday recently.
Wow.
And they then punted me. They were my punters in the JSC. And I was comfortably appointed a judge. That was a memorable moment for me to become a judge. I remember the Muslim Views then. The headlines, first Muslim judge for the Cape, which was quite correct at that time. But, Judge Slope who predates me by 6 months on the bench, also became a Muslim later, Yahya.
But, very much in the news as well, I understand,
Yeah, so, but then I was the first, I was first person of color of Cape Town appointed to the bench, and that drew enormous amount of attention and support from the community, which I still get, incidentally.
But I mean, here's the point. I'm thinking about your walk with your friend on Sea Point, who first, in this case, popped the question about you thinking with higher aspirations. And I'm just thinking about he or she, ironically, on Sea Point. Well, he made you see the point. I mean, it's something that stands out for me, right? And then you mentioned the other names. How important is that? How important is it for someone to lobby for one? Because I talk about it strongly, about someone who speaks up for you in your absence and promotes you even without you being aware of it. How important is it for you?
I think it's rather inappropriate to lobby yourself. The most unlikely people tell me, why don't you speak to Judge Lope? I want to become a judge. And I know he's not the judge material. I mean, you don't judge yourself to be judge material. You let somebody else decide that for you. People you appear before, people who know you, know your integrity and so on, who can support your nomination. But look, perhaps I come from a different generation. I'm not so. We were in the struggle, so we thought differently. But nowadays, I mean, the people promote themselves for a higher position. And many people ask me, do you know President Ramaphosa? I said, yeah, I do know him. Say, why don't you ask him to give me this and that job? I said, I'll never do that. It's not my function to do that. Of course, I do know President Ramaphosa. When we formed, I was the founder member, one of the founder members of the National Association of Democratic Lawyers. And the young representative there was the president of the country, then Cyril Ramaphosa. Okay. And in fact, his wife then became our administrator of Nadel. So we're all same cluster of families that grew from the struggle years. The struggle years.
You seem to have done a lot. I mean, what have you not done when you reflect on your lives? Like, what's got away from you?
I could never play football. I was chairman of the Blackpool Football Club, the Blackpool Football Sports Association. I set up the hall where the club is played. But I myself never played. And my children, unfortunately, also didn't play football. They did judo and stuff like that. So, and my late wife grew up in a buka, and her preoccupation was rugby and not football.
Also, yeah.
So because although we at Salt River and Buka are 5 kilometers apart, but they grew up following rugby and we grew up following football in Salt River. So I was a great fan then. I don't follow much football now, but then. But I myself could never play football, nor could I swim, unfortunately. So those are the things which I probably hope to do somewhere in my life, although I do have a hideout here in Cape Town where there's a beach. But I've not really learned to swim yet or play football.
And I was going to ask you,
rather bookie type.
Well, it's interesting you say you can't swim, because I was going to say, I mean, in your field, being a lawyer, being an advocate, being a judge, and then being politically aware, in many ways you have to swim with the sharks, isn't it?
I've been swimming with this. That I could do. I can smell a shark. You know, in the left wing they say the petit bourgeois are the first to sniff the wind. I am petit bourgeois in that sense of the word. I can sniff when there's trouble or when there's a shark in the water. The sharks have telling features, and especially the two-legged ones. And they're the most that will attack you personally. They attack you personally, you must know they're being hurt. And you know, that sort of stuff. You know, as a judge, well, not as a judge, I suppose one has world experience, life experience that will make you point out where the real sharks are around. Sharks, unfortunately, feature too often in this country.
Now, often when we speak to people like yourself, like on this feature called Champion People, the plan is not just to get your story, but to actually get your story to inspire other people to be champion like in their field. So upon reflection, right, what are the individual qualities that you possess that you think with hindsight has set you up to be successful?
I did everything to advance the cause of our people. But in my case, it was predetermined almost that I should play a role in the events that were occurring in this country. But to play a role in society advances you. I played since my earliest years at school, and as soon as I got back as a student as well, and as soon as I got back, I started playing a role in the community. I was chairman of the civic with people like under the late Anwar Nagia, who's my dear friend, which I lost last year. The late there's Peter Meyer, and then before there is Frank van der Horst from SECAS, who I played a role with in civic. And then, of course, I left them all when Dalla and Red September approached me, and much to the chagrin of my hitherto political comrades, I formed the first branch of the ANC in Woodstock. And my treasurer, incidentally, was not treasurer, member of my executive was Willie Hofmeyer. And a junior in our ranks was the lady, what's her name now? The lady became minister, later went to now recently at the Truth Commission. I forget her name. At old age, when you get old, you forget names. I keep on forgetting names. But many of these prominent figures were actually my juniors in the first branch. I'm glad I played a role in the formation of that branch, but let me say this, that, you know, I still believe in my initial political training, and that the alternative to South Africa would be a principled view of how this country should be developed, basic fundamental principles of equity to advance not simply the rich, but the interests of the poor in this country.
Yeah.
You
raise an important point, and maybe my next question will help you even amplify that further. That two things as we get to wrapping up now. One is what's working in South Africa, and the other is what's not working.
Yeah, that is it's difficult in the judicial system as a whole. is under tremendous strain at this moment. And I think we need decisive action on the part of the powers that be to intervene. They have not intervened, and they should intervene to remedy the dangerous course to which South Africa is degenerating insofar as the legal system as a whole is following. This is probably, in my 5 years since I became a judge, this is the weakest moment in which the judiciary finds itself in.
Why do you say that? Give me an example of why you say that.
Well, I don't to give you the examples, but the Chief Justice has been rather unfortunate in the leadership he has afforded us. We are all religious. We have our views. But as a judge, one doesn't carry one's views on one's sleeves. One looks at the broader interest of the country as a whole. In particular, the Chief Justice should be doing that. I'm not criticizing, he's my good friend, but he unfortunately has not afforded us the leadership one should. Secondly, humanity demands of us that we side with the poor, not in this country, but the marginalized throughout the world. And the most marginalized people in the world today remain the people of Palestine. And if you cannot unequivocally support the cause of the Palestinian people, you can hardly call yourself a person committed to the achievement of human rights here or anywhere else.
Okay, well amplified there. What's working?
What's working is the country is going. The young people in positions of power, which hopefully they will use to their effect. What is working also, there is a vibrant democracy in the sense that there's debate that's continuing. It may not be the ideal outcome, but we're not a dictatorship. There is debate going on. There are many good people around, and there are many good people who are still young enough to participate in the processes of change in this country. There are also an emergent generation of young people who have a vision of the future society should look like, and who will and continue to play a role. We haven't reached the pits yet. We can raise ourselves to fulfill the aspirations, not simply of any political party, but the aspirations of the people who participated with their blood and their lives to create a better South Africa.
Let's end with the end in mind. I mean, one day you will be no more. That's a reality. How would you like people to remember you?
If they can say, "Here lies a good man," I'm happy.
As simple as that. Here lies a good, and you're saying it with a smile, and I've picked up on that smile. Well, listen, our time is up.
Let me just add
Yep.
to that. You know, I carry my grandfather's name. My grandfather, my full name is not Siraj, it's Sirajuddin, it's the lamp of the faith. And my grandfather died before I was born. But he died before I was born, but when I became an attorney, many people supported me because I was my grandfather's son. He was a good man in his time here in Salt River, where I lived. And I'd love to live by his example. I'd probably be buried in his grave.
Well, there you are. What's in the name is important, and noted that you'll be probably buried in his grave. I'll remember that. Appreciate your time. It's been great connecting with you. Love your stories, by the way. Hopefully, a book is coming up pretty soon, because all those stories and a lot more needs to be told and shared, not just to Salt River and the Western Cape, but all around the country. Siraj Desai, retired judge Siraj Desai. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Wa alaikum salam.
Absolutely right. Assalamu alaikum. That's it. The Champion People feature. We do it every day from 9:30 onwards, and we'll do it again on Monday. I wonder who's going to be the guest next week. In fact, before we wrap up, I'm going to just get Ziad to play. There's a voice note. Then we're going to wrap up. If we can just do that, get Ziad to give me a thumbs up. But listen, by the way, what about feedback from you? You can tweet me, you can Instagram me, you can Facebook me, Ashraf Garda. You can do the same for Salam Media. Love to get your feedback on everything we do. What's working, what you think is not working. And the WhatsApp line, as always, 061 766 0355. Okay, here's the last one we're going to play out with.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think it's more about giving instead of taking. Alhamdulillah, I live in a community here in Bonella, in Durban, in Cater Manor, and I do have myself, yes, but I try to get through from my friends money, and I cook for the underprivileged. I distribute about 120 million.
Okay, I think we got that and sort of got cut short at the end. But that's it for today's show. Thank you for giving of your time. That's the bottom line to all of this. And get the balancing right between the giving and the taking. Coming up next, Juz 11 of the Holy Quran by Sheikh Yasin al-Dosari. Assalamu alaikum, Jummah Mubarak. We will talk